Okay. Good evening, Facebook, and welcome. This is the 4th District Republican Party of Story County GOP Forum tonight. We're excited to bring you all 5 candidates in this race. Obviously, it's been a pretty contested race. We were lucky in Story County to host all the declared candidates at the time, and there were 4 of them last year at one of our fundraisers, one of the first counties to do that, and we were very pleased to be able to introduce them to you. Since then, they've all been around here quite a bit and have been all around the county, all around the district. Things have changed in the race. Obviously, we're in a different environment now and we can't meet in person to bring this to you. So we are doing it through the lovely technology that we have at our disposal. So with that, welcome. The Republican Party of Story County is obviously Story County, Iowa, one of the largest counties in the 4th district here. And we're excited to bring this here to our local viewers. So as far as introductions, my name is Bret Barker, and I am privileged to serve as a chairman here in Story County. And John?
I'm John Henry, and I am the publicity director for Story County, but more importantly, as Bret puts it, I am the devil's advocate.
Yeah, so we're going to tag team this a little bit. The format we have chosen is a forum versus a traditional debate. And there's a few reasons for that. One is just the technological ease of having a smooth, well-run technological debate. Forum is a little bit easier. And 2, it brings something else out. So we've had some debates online that we've been able to watch where candidates are timed and it's very strict and they're able to hit on a couple talking points and then right away get cut off. So this will allow us to go a little bit deeper, probe a little bit deeper, and potentially not cut the candidate off and mute them right away if they have something important to say that's relevant to voters. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility there. So with that, we're going to ask some questions. A little bit of a disclaimer is we've pooled some questions from local voters here. So they don't reflect my opinion. They don't reflect John's opinion. They don't reflect the opinion of the party here. The leadership in Story County strives very hard to remain neutral because we feel it's important to have candidates feel comfortable to come to an event like this where they are all here with us. So we want to remain neutral in that regard. So there will be some questions. One that voters are interested in. 2, if there is a controversy as a candidate, I know they want to address it head on in their own words and be able to explain their side of the story. So we want to give them that opportunity as well. So we will be bringing them in one at a time. They will have 15 minutes to spend with us. And then when that is done, we will go ahead and switch them out and bring in the next candidate. So with that, we will be, if time allows, taking questions from the chat. So on the official Republican Party of Story County feed here, we are watching for questions. I know this video is probably shared all over Facebook land, so we may not have access to see those. So if you want a question that for us to answer, I would go ahead and go to the official Republican Party of Story County feed. So with that, we have about a minute left where we're going to bring in our first candidate. John, did I forget anything?
Well, yeah, you forgot to say that. Go to the Story County Facebook page because we need the numbers.
And share the page.
Showing that you viewed it from our page because it makes us feel better as human beings.
Yep, and definitely share this feed. And we know other people will want to see it. So click that share button, do a watch party, whatever it is you want to do so other folks can pop in here. So hopefully we do see the numbers going up, so more and more folks are popping in. So we're excited to bring this to you. And with that, we'll go ahead and get ready to bring in our first candidate. So how we chose the order, I'll go ahead and hit that. So our tradition here in Story County is when it's a contested race, we typically let the incumbent go last as a courtesy. And so what we did was we randomized the first 4 with a fun little spinner on the internet where you put all their names in and it spun a wheel. And so whoever is picked first went first, then the second, third, fourth, and so on. So that's how they were done at random for the 4 challengers. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our first guest.
And our first guest is Randy Feenstra.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and let him connect here.
You going to show us your picture, Mr. Feenstra?
I'm coming.
All right.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
Hey, great.
Yes.
We're getting it set up here.
Perfect.
Give me 1 second.
So with everybody, we're going to let them introduce themselves and give some opening remarks before we get into the Q&A.
Are you ready to go, Bret?
We're ready to go. Yep.
All right. I didn't hear your first question, so I was setting up there.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. So we're just going to give you a chance to introduce yourself, give whatever opening remarks you would like.
Gotcha. Well, hey, thanks for having me on tonight, Bret, and I think I heard John Henry on. Thank you so much for doing this. It was exciting. I think you, Bret, did the virtual 5K and the beta 5K, and be curious to know your times, and I'd love to run with you guys sometime. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad you put that on. Great to be with you, Story County Republicans. I just want to first stop and say that we all have to remember what we're doing this weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend, and a lot of people gave their life. They gave the ultimate price for our freedoms. And we can be out here, we can be engaged in politics and have an open, free speech, and that doesn't happen very many places in the world. So it's just such a blessing that God has given us in America that we have this. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm Randy Feenstra. And I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, I'm a father of 4 children. I've been married to my wife, Lynette, for 27 wonderful years. Funny thing is, we got to know each other at the local pizza ranch, and we were a pizza ranch romance. That's how it all started. So I have 4 children. I have 1 in junior high, 1 in high school, 1 in college, and 1 in grad school. So it's been a great and busy time for myself. After college, went to Dordt University and then Iowa State University. After college, I worked at the Foreign Candy Company, a large candy company. We made Black Forest gummy bears and mega warheads, children's novelty candies, and I sold them all around the country. I sold them to Walmart Corporation, Bentonville, Arkansas, to Target Corporation, Minneapolis, 7-Eleven, all these different places. That's where I sort of cut my teeth. That's where I learned about private sector business. As I was doing that for 7 years, traveling Monday through Friday, my wife sort of stopped me and said, "Hey, you need to be a dad. You need to be a father." So I pivoted and got into government and became city administrator of our community. And I'll tell you, that's where I realized that government needs to change. I went from fast-paced private sector company to a land of bureaucracy and red tape. And I finally said, that's it. I've got to do something. So I ran for county treasurer, was county treasurer for a couple of years, and then was in the Iowa Senate. And in the Iowa Senate, we delivered. I was elected assistant majority leader and then chair of Ways and Means. And from there, I delivered the largest income tax cut in Iowa history, which was signed by Governor Reynolds. I delivered on the pro-life movement. We defunded Planned Parenthood. We sponsored the bill to define life at conception with no exceptions except the life of the mother. I championed the Second Amendment rights, making sure that we had the largest expansion of gun rights ever in state history, opposing all red flag laws and co-sponsoring constitutional carry. Finally, I delivered on illegal immigration. We banned sanctuary cities in Iowa, and we need to do that in Congress also. So that's why I'm supported by people like the senator, your local senator, Annette Sweeney, and Ambassador Terry Branstad, Jeremy Davis, Dane Nielsen, former Supervisor Marty Chitty, Steve Sukup. They're sponsoring me because they're endorsing me because they know I can make a difference. I can be effective because I've done it in the Iowa legislature. So that's why I'm running. I want to help President Trump build the wall, defund Planned Parenthood, and be unwavering on the Second Amendment.
Very good. I'll let John go with the first question.
Oh, sure. Let John go with the first question.
John, you're first.
I always ends up that way because he knows I'm going to interrupt him anyway. Okay, this is a what if question.
Okay.
Considering what's happened, how are you, Randy Feenstra, going to handle the media attention on the 4th District representative in Congress?
You know what? We always put media to the side. We have to be principled. We have to make sure that we are unwavering in our principles. My faith steers everything I do. Everything. It's the foundation of who I am. And there's media, absolutely, there's media out there, but you have to just make sure that you stay ethical, that you stay moral, that you don't lie, and you just tell it like it is. You know what? The media, the liberal media, they'll do what they have to, but we, as a person that's been in the Iowa Senate for the last 12 years, understand that, hey, if you tell it like it is and you prove that you're effective and conservative, hopefully they treat you right.
And Randy, obviously there's a lot of candidates in this race right now. Why do you feel that you would be the best one to represent the voters in the district?
Exactly. It really comes down to what I just said, that you need to be an effective conservative leader. I've proven it. Everything else, people can talk. We have other candidates in this race that, it's campaign rhetoric. I'll do this, I'll do that. Okay, let's go back to me. Let's look at the results that I've done, right? So what are the most conservative things? What do we as conservatives look for? I delivered on the pro-life movement. This is personal to me. It's absolutely personal. To defund Planned Parenthood, sponsor the bill Life at Conception, make sure that the heartbeat bill gets passed at the federal level. That's why National Right to Life has endorsed me. When you talk about the Second Amendment, all right, you can chirp all you want if you're another candidate, but let's look at the facts. I supported the largest expansion of gun rights ever in Iowa's history. I co-sponsored constitutional carry bill. Now, I oppose all red flag laws. Always will, always have. I just want to make sure of that. And then it comes down to what we did protecting our state. We banned sanctuary cities. We passed E-Verify. These are things that need to get done in Congress. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm asking people to support myself, because I've been the effective, proven conservative leader that has got it done. That's why National Right to Life is endorsing me. That's why the Jewish Coalition has endorsed me, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, right? They see somebody that is an effective conservative.
Okay, drawing from the I'm being endorsed by national groups, are you also receiving campaign funds from outside the district?
Just like every organization, I've received 80% of my funds have come from Iowa. I've received over 2,200 contributions from Iowa. Of that, 1,300 of them from the 4th district. And those are $5 to $5,000. Last week, I just had a lady come to my door. She lives a block and a half away and said, Randy, here's $5. Protect Social Security. You have to do this. And I agree with her 100%. I received another check from a farmer in Hardin County that said, Randy, we need you. We need a voice on the Ag Committee. You need to get it done. I have also received contributions from small business. I have received contributions from organizations, just like Senator Grassley have, just like Senator Ernst have, just like our governor has, because they've done it. They've seen what it means to have an effective leader. And that's why I'm endorsed by Ambassador Branstad and everyone else.
I'll
Okay.
follow up on that a little bit there, Randy. Obviously, with those groups, our mailboxes are full with mailers from those groups. And so then in emails from Congressman King and others, they'll claim that the support means, you could be bought or you would be a rhino, which they mean Republican in name only. So what do you have to say to those that do question your conservative credentials?
So there's been organizations that have supported me. That doesn't mean I support everything that they stand for. But this is what it means. I've been in the Iowa legislature for 12 years. I am a principled conservative. I will never waver on my principles. Never, ever, ever. I have never wavered in the Iowa legislature, and I will never waver in Congress. Look at my record. That's simply all I have to say. They can say all this rhetoric they want. Look at my rhetoric, or look at my record. That's why I got an A rating from the NRA, right? That just doesn't happen. There's, I can just say that, National Right to Life, they don't endorse somebody unless they know they can get it done. I'm going to get it done.
Okay, John?
Yeah.
Want to ask the coronavirus one?
Sure. Randy, we've got, now I'm going to break this to you.
Okay.
I've been unemployed since October.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And so we have coronavirus payments that are coming in that run through a lot of different things. Are they doing it right? Are they doing it wrong? How should they be doing it different?
Well, just like in your circumstance, first of all, I do applaud President Trump and how he handled this. I also applaud Governor Reynolds. I mean, this is such a tough situation. First time for everyone. This is all new to us. But what the first thing they did is said, how can we help the unemployed? And that's what we did. How can we help businesses? And we helped with SBA loans. I mean, these are big things in rural Iowa. You think about rural Iowa, the small business. I have a friend who owns a clothing and shoe store. Well, we could help him out temporarily. Now he's back open again. I have all the restaurants. that we've helped to make sure that they could stay alive. But the bigger thing is this, who's really getting crushed? We're all hurting. We're all hurting. But the farming community, they could go bankrupt. My family, my in-laws have a family farm. We all work on that farm. I vaccinate hogs and sort cattle and wake up early in the morning and load cattle and hogs. It pains me to think that they could go bankrupt because the markets are crushed, and because of the packers, they had to shut down. So now we're euthanizing. But I know we'll get through this. We're Americans. We're the 4th district. We're Iowans. But we need a voice. We need somebody that can help. We need to make sure that we have indemnity payments for the producers. We have to, I applaud President Trump for the Defense Production Act, that we're trying to keep these packing plants open. But on the same breath, we have to make sure that we're fighting for them, that we're breaking up this monopoly that's happening. That's why Attorney General Barr's got to get involved and stop this. But I'm glad that we have President Trump and our governor trying to balance this, the best for our health and also keeping open our economy as much as possible. For workers, we have to find skills. We have to make sure that unemployment works through and that, just like yourself, that you can get back to working again. Right now in our nation, we're at 20% unemployment. That is unbelievable. So we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and so speaking of coronavirus, obviously the pandemic's changed the way candidates campaign. It's potentially changing turnout models. How has the pandemic affected your campaign, and how do you think a change in turnout can affect the outcome of the race?
First of all, it's interesting, incredibly interesting what it's done to the race. We're probably going to see a third more voters, which is awesome, which is wonderful. But what our campaign did, we absolutely had a pivot, and we changed and said, all right, we're Iowans. What can we do? Well, we delivered for our neighbors. We sent out postcards. We did calls and said, how can we help? What can we do? And my background, I could help people write SBA loans to small businesses. I did a lot of them. I could help people get through the unemployment benefits and work through the process. We had multiple people call and say, hey, we need diapers or we need wipes, and we helped them through. That's what Iowans do. And that's what we did as a campaign. And that's why we have 600 county chairs that are supporting myself in all 39 counties. That's why we have 260 students that are engaged. It's grassroots. They see what it means to be effective, conservative, and get things done. It's dramatically changed, but it's exciting to see all the voters still getting out, doing their absentee ballots. And like I said, the more that turn out, the great for our democracy in our nation.
I have one last question, and it's a hard one to ask.
Okay.
We have 5 candidates. We have a 35% requirement in order to get onto the ballot. What happens if we have a split vote and it's a brokered convention? Does Randy get on board with whoever is put forward as the candidate? Does Randy help get those elected in the 4th district?
John, that is a great question. I hope first and foremost, for me, obviously, my faith, my family is very important, but we're Republicans, right? We are Republicans. And what does that mean? We back whoever the nomination is. We back them 100%. That's what Republicans do. And we have to make sure that, I'll support who's ever on the ticket up and down that ballot and make sure that we get them to where they need to be. I'll be working hard to get this done.
And with that, Randy, we have about 45 more seconds. So what thoughts do you want to leave us with?
Well, I just want to leave you with, again, who I am. I am a Christian. I'm a husband. I am a constitutional conservative that absolutely believes that we need an effective, proven leader in our country, in Congress, for the 4th district. We need a voice for our families. We need a voice on agriculture. We need a voice for our small businesses on Main Street. And I'm there to make sure that I help President Trump, that we build the wall, that we defund Planned Parenthood, protect the tax cuts, secure our borders. And that is why I'm endorsed by Ambassador Branstad, Bob Vanderplots, Senator Annette Sweeney. All these people are looking and saying, this guy has done it. And that's what I want to do in Congress.
Very good. And that's
Thanks, Randy.
Hopefully
Hopefully we didn't chew on you too hard.
Oh, Brett and John, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, Memorial Day weekend, we have to remember, we have to absolutely remember what this weekend's all about.
Thank you very much, Randy. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, so with that, we will bring in our next guest here, which is Mr. Steve Reeder. And Steve should be connecting right now. There we are. Can you hear us, Steve?
I can, Brett. How you doing tonight?
Very good. How are you?
Very good.
So like with Randy, we'll give you a chance to give opening remarks, introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of go through some Q&A.
Okay. Well, thank you. And that's John on there also. How you doing, John?
We're doing all right.
Very good. So I'm Steve Reeder. I've been married for 32 years. My wife, Brenda, and I live here in Arnold's Park. And we have two beautiful grown daughters, Emily Rose and Anna Louise. And this weekend is a important weekend for me because I am a patriot and I just am honored to serve, and I mean, not serve, but to honor the people that have served this country. And in 2014, I was given the privilege to join a World War II veteran who returned to Normandy for the first time in 70 years. And we started out our trip by him being honored at an event over in England. And then we went over to Normandy and we had a guide that took us. He landed on D-Day on Utah Beach, and we retraced his steps. And the stories I heard from Uncle Edo, who I accompanied on this trip, was just remarkable. And seeing the people in France coming out and paying tribute to this veteran was just something I will never forget. So the people that fought for this country over the years deserve a great deal of gratitude. And I'm so appreciative of what they've done to protect our United States Constitution. And that's why I have aligned myself with this really neat group of patriots across the country that are all also running for Congress. I'm talking about guys in California like Joe Collins, Buzz Patterson, Jim Bradley, and Tamika Hamilton, Burgess Owens in Utah, Chris Palombi in Maryland, and Bill Schaefer right down here in Iowa, District 3. All these guys are patriots, and a lot of them have served in our military. And that's who I am. I'm not interested in aligning myself with the higher ups in the establishment. I want to go serve the people of Iowa, and I want to go serve our country and support our president. And so that's why I align myself with these patriots across the country, because that's who I am, and that's what I want to do.
Very good. We'll go to John first with the questions.
All right. I have on my list of questions. Tell me about how you feel about the right to life movement, how you feel about abortion on demand, how you feel about euthanasia.
I was born into a Christian family, went to Catholic grade school, Jesuit high school, and the importance of life, the sanctity of life has been extremely important to me for my entire life. I will defend the unborn right all the way through, and life begins at conception. And I will defend. And more important, I have one daughter in education and one in mental health. And raising daughters, you know that there's an emotional component to pregnancy. And I want to make sure that those women are given counseling and therapy to make sure that they know what an important decision it is. And the option for abortion should be the number one. If that woman decides that she either isn't economically feasible to raise that child. And that's why it kind of goes back to my wanting to promote the economic viability of individuals and small businesses, because so that a woman that a lot of times it's an economic situation where they are troubled and have an unwanted pregnancy. So I go back to, I met this woman down in Carroll County, and she gave up a baby for adoption when she was in her teens. And she met that child for the first time when he was an adult. And the first thing he said to her was, "Thank you for not killing me." And that tells me right there. And what happens is abortion cheapens life. And if we do that, who knows what they'll start doing to our seniors in the later stages of our life. So we have to protect the sanctity of life from the moment of conception all the way to the end. And it's in God's plan, not ours.
Very good. And Steve, there are obviously a lot of candidates in this race with 5. Why do you feel that you're the best to represent the voters of the district?
Well, Bret, I've been in business for 35 years. And for me to be successful in the real estate business, I had to be an innovator and think outside the box. So whether I was doing brokerage and having to be creative in marketing, or doing a development, I had to make sure that I was always thinking ahead rather than being reactionary. You have to plan a development to make sure, because you never know what type of a user is going to come along, or a buyer or a lessee. So you got to be thinking outside the box. And I've also done projects in other states, and I've seen how regulation can stifle business. I've seen it firsthand, small business up through large business. I've worked with people in agriculture, manufacturing, trucking, petroleum businesses, and I've seen how any type of more government regulation, taxation will have a huge impact on business. So I'm going to follow President Trump's plan, because he reached out to all these industries across the nation when he came into office to find out how can we grow our economy. And we saw, even with being attacked from the left and the media through the first term, he's been successful. So I've aligned myself with an advisory board across the state of Iowa. And once I'm elected, I'll have task forces around the Iowa with the best people in agriculture, business, and finance, and medical, so that we can tap the best people on a local level to make sure that decisions that are being made for Iowa in Congress represent the people of Iowa, and not special interest groups, not the lobbyists, and not the establishment or the unelected bureaucrats.
Okay, Steve. Tell us how you feel about the Second Amendment.
Okay, John, I am a firm believer in our U.S. Constitution. When I go to Washington, I will be representing the United States Constitution and the people of Iowa, and those are the priorities. Well, obviously, I believe in God, and He's first, but U.S. Constitution and the people of Iowa. So I will stand firm behind the Second Amendment. There is no gray area. I'm not in favor of any type of gun control. We've already got laws on the book, John. There's already background checks out there, so that people, so hopefully someone that's mentally unstable doesn't get a hold of a gun. I'll support the laws that are there, and I don't want any changes to the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to bear arms, and I'll stand firm on that. I'm not beholden to any special interest groups or PACs. I'm beholden to the people of Iowa.
Very good. And Steve, we asked Randy some hard questions, so I have one for you too.
No problem.
So you did a press release last night about being excluded from the WHO debate,
Right.
meeting their fundraising thresholds, and we had a conversation about that.
Yes.
Do you believe you would have the resources to beat J.D. Scholten in a general election?
Absolutely. So when I got into this race, I had a big real estate project going on in 2019. I figured 8 months would give me plenty of time to get into the race. So Brent and I set out on September 26th of last fall on this race. And I wanted to wear out the shoe leather and the tires of my truck by getting in front of people. And we did that. We went out across all the counties throughout the district and got in front of people. And I really didn't have my hand out like some of these other candidates started way back in early 2019. and they were chasing all the big money and they were chasing all of King's former donors. And so I figured, I'm going to get my name out there, and then I'm going to start, raising some funds. Well, then COVID hits, and Brenda and I said, we're not going to start knocking on doors asking for money. Let's just keep going. And I know that the people of Iowa, and of course, there'll be other endorsements coming from people in the Republican Party once I win the primary. So I have no problem. But more than anything, this money thing really bothers me. And that's what's wrong with politics, Bret, because I had no interest in taking dirty money. And so I was excluded from an upcoming debate because I didn't meet the financial threshold. Okay. But I'm going to beat J.D. Scholten because I know how to represent the people of Iowa. A leftist agenda and rallying behind the socialists does not sit well with the people of Iowa. I know the moral fabric of Iowa, and that's what they want. I've also connected with numerous Democrats and independents in this state, and I know how to talk to them. I've been in real estate long enough, and my personality, I can connect with anything. And that's one of the things on how once I get there, I'll be successful is being able to negotiate and understand and listen, be a listener and not a talker. Thanks, Bret.
Okay, you've said several times you want to represent the people of Iowa. What happens when there's legislation which you, Steve Reeder, oppose, but your constituents come out major in favor of it? How do you handle that? Do you vote based on your principles or based on what you're hearing from the people at home?
Gosh, John, that's a tough one because I don't see myself being any different than the people of Iowa. I really don't. I know the people of Iowa. I know the people in these small towns, and I can see myself. I'm very principled, and I can tell you, I see more of a conflict coming up when you have people high up in the party saying, we want you to vote a certain way. I see myself, my moral convictions align with the people of Iowa. I don't see there being a big delta there, John. I can see myself, look at the Democratic Party. And this is a perfect example of why there's some candidates that didn't represent the people of Iowa. Most people, if you knew what was going on, knew that this impeachment against our president was a total sham, total waste of time. It was based on lies. So it gets all the way through the House, and the people of Iowa knew it. I talked to them on the street, and they knew it was a total witch hunt against our president. Nancy Pelosi went to all those Democrats and said, you are going to vote with the party. We had 3 Democratic House of Representatives that voted with Nancy Pelosi. They did not vote the conscience of Iowa. That is wrong. And that's why I'm so strong for, aligning myself with these other patriots. I hope we turn all 4 of these. Well, obviously Steve King's been a great leader of Iowa in the 4th district, and it's already red, but I hope we have all 4 districts red come November.
And Steve, we have about 1:45 seconds left, so you'll probably only be able to get to the surface. But coronavirus, big deal right now.
Yes.
Do you think the government got it right? Do you think they got it wrong? And what's your opinion on the government response?
Okay, I'd love to talk about this one. Okay, I think the president did the right thing by bringing in these experts. However, I felt he should use his gut instincts and talk to more of the people on the front line rather than these so-called experts like Ferrucci or I think he's a fraud. And we see these this big money behind wanting to promote vaccines and saying we have to find a cure. There's not going to be a cure to COVID. Look at what happened in South Dakota. They kept their state open, and they were able to keep their economy rolling. And I think that the president needs to make sure he has the right people. Well, he's got like guys like Ben Carson, and those are the right type of people that needs to be listening to, not the WHO and not the CDC and all their, because they're backed by all these big lobbyists and these big special interest groups. Our president has a good gut instinct, and we need to get our country open again and make sure. Like, one other quick thing is like this hydrochloroquine. There's an example of a drug that's been around for 30 or 40 years, okay? And it's worked. And then we have all these so-called authorities saying that that they didn't want people using it, when, like the Associated American Physicians and Surgeons said, hey, there's no problem with this. It's got a 90% effective rate. So it's just making sure you listen to the right people and then run with your gut instinct.
And with that, Steve, the timer's going off, so we're out of time, but we enjoyed having you come in and chat with us this evening, and hope you have a good rest of your Memorial Day weekend.
Good seeing you again, Steve.
God bless you both. Thank you.
Okay, so now we will swap out Mr. Reader, and next up is Jeremy Taylor, who will be joining us right now. So we'll go ahead and bring Jeremy in.
And now we wait.
Yep.
Everybody play the Jeopardy music in your head.
Connection always.
Hi, Jeremy. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
We do.
So
Great.
it's good to have you join us, Jeremy.
Thank you very much.
Others, we'll let you introduce yourself, give us some opening thoughts, and then we'll kind of go through some Q&A.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Jeremy Taylor. I'm a lifelong Iowan, a constitutional conservative, a husband, a father of 6 great kids, and we're really folks that are living the American dream. My wife immigrated here from Vietnam. I met her in church while I was serving on a Christian mission. And my dad was the first in his whole family line to ever graduate from high school and go on to college. And so we just look at the opportunities that we were afforded by our parents and the opportunities that we have in this great country. And so with that, as we come upon Memorial Day, I'm somebody that's been called to serve. I served currently as a chaplain and major in the Iowa Army National Guard. And I've seen the sacrifices that our men and women have made as we deploy a quarter of our Iowa Army National Guard. And I know that those sacrifices, I want to make sure were not in vain. And so with that, I know every generation is called to fight for freedom and to fight for liberties. And that's what I want to do. That service call to me meant stepping forward in Sioux City and representing a House district that hadn't been served by a Republican in nearly 20 years. I won that seat and stayed tried and true on principle, passing legislation that affected veterans and probably the most important deployment issues, standing for life, even when it meant going against my own caucus, standing for the Second Amendment. I too have an A ranking from the NRA, and I'm not supported by red flag law PACs. And I'm somebody that has not just gone along to get along, but really stood true on principle. I was elected to the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors and helped turn around the largest county after 3 decades of Democrat control. And so look at myself as a change agent and am called in this race, I believe, to help hold this seat for not just a Republican, not just a conservative, but a constitutionalist. And that's why conservatives asked me to run. Steve King, I have long supported and want it noted in the primaries as well as in the general. But when he lost Woodbury County and many others and almost lost the seat to J.D. Schulten, others grew obviously concerned, and that was before losing committee assignments and a partnership with President Trump. So believe that I'm called to serve to be the constitutionalist who can stand for such a time as this, effectively serving the 4th District of Iowa, and somebody who's gone through many trials in life and come out on the other end and the other side, and we've done so as a family. And so with that, I'm absolutely committed to a life and principled constitutionalist agenda in Congress.
Very good. Well, Steve, one of the questions that I've been asked to ask is about the right to life, about euthanasia, about abortion. Where does Jeremy sit at that on that?
There's no more important issue in any campaign than the right to life or in any position. And that's why I believe that we need to have a seat on the Judiciary Committee. It's absolutely important. We currently don't. I am the only candidate that's introduced a 10-part Defend Life plan that starts with not only the federal heartbeat bill, but pushing personhood. And it also enshrines into law the Mexico City policy, which prohibits any abortion funding to overseas providers, and then also enshrines that here at home to defund Planned Parenthood. But I also want to mention a couple of other things. There is in this doubling the adoption tax credit. We've had adoption in my extended family, and we need to put, as we have done historically, our money where our mouth is as constitutionalists to come alongside men and women who are facing this very, very trying time. This doubles the adoption tax credit, makes it fully refundable, and really champions the cause of life. So I'm somebody who not only believes that, but I don't want to just be called to be somebody in this. I want to be called to do something. And so that's why the lead counsel for Iowa's Heartbeat Bill has endorsed my campaign, as well as many in the pro-life community. They know that in the Iowa House, and I want to use this as an example of being principled, when there were 60 House Republicans and there was abortion funding for an HHS budget, I stood up in my own caucus and I said, I won't vote for this. Because I was called to not only answer to my conscience, but to my faith. And as a Christian and a father, this is where I stand. You'll have nobody who fights harder on the issue of life than me in this race.
Jeremy, in the race, there's 5 candidates, so it's a crowded field. Why do you feel like you're the best one to represent the voters of the 4th District?
Well, I'm somebody who, in my military experience, has been called to brief top generals, who knows the scope of the conflicts that we're facing, as well as the heartaches that are being faced by so many of our 6,800 Iowa Army National Guardsmen and women. So I take that leadership experience, as well as somebody that, as I just mentioned, will be principled. I do believe that if you follow the money in this race, that's important. Associations are important, and so are principled positions. We cannot elect a go along to get along Republican. I have an A from the American Conservative Union. Randy Feenstra has a B and a D in 2016. I'm somebody that mentioned how I stood on principle, and Senator Feenstra asked us to look at the record. When he made a principled stand on sports gambling, he reversed that, the same exact legislation. And if you follow the money, that's a compromising issue. I also believe that we need somebody who can win. I won my election to the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors by 4,000 votes when Steve King lost my county by 3,000, and that was before losing committee assignments. So I believe that I am the constitutionalist who can beat J.D. Scholten, but at the same time has lived where the left would take us. And I know another candidate's team asked, why are you talking about socialism? Bernie Sanders not at the top of the ticket any longer. Well, I know the incremental steps. I've lived under a communist regime in Vietnam on Christian mission, and I know what it takes to fight for our freedoms and where the left would ultimately take us. So believe that I'm positioned in those unique ways as a military officer, someone who's navigated the legal immigration process, and as somebody who can fight for our historic rights and values.
You mentioned a couple of times now about resources and money from outside. Where does Jeremy get in his funds to run this?
That's a great question, and I appreciate it. Most of my funding comes from former Steve King supporters, about 80%. And I think that that's important. That's why the co-chair of the Iowa Trump campaign, the Iowa State College Republicans, and 60 conservative activists, and I'm not talking about the Main Street PAC that supports red flag laws. I'm not talking about a right to life organization that killed the Heartbeat Bill. I am talking about constitutionalists who see in me somebody that will not just go along to get along. And so that to me is a critical difference in this race, especially when one's shown that he can be compromised with money on the principled stances. So you'll follow the money in me, and you'll see that the only PAC that I have is from Siouxland Ethanol, because I know that I'll fight tooth and nail for the RFS on the Ag Committee, which is important. But that's a difference in this race.
So your money is from inside the district? What percentage?
I would say over 90% is from within the district. The only exception, we do have about 3 miles away some folks in South Dakota who know that I've been a leader in the business community, but that are constitutionalists, and they want to see this seat won. This has national implications. I've long told people we cannot lose a seat where we started with a 22% lead, only won by 3% the last time, and that's before a lot of the distracting issues. We can't lose a seat if we're going to take back the U.S. House of Representatives from the likes of Nancy Pelosi, AOC, and the others. Because if we do, I truly believe our children and our children's children aren't going to recognize the country that we leave to them.
Jeremy, we tried to think of what we thought might be the toughest question for each candidate. And when it got to Senator Feenstra, people were asking about it in the chat. And now with yours, people are asking about it in the chat. So there was controversy early in the campaign over legal disputes with your situation on the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors. And what led to that resignation, and what do you want voters to know about your side of the story?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm glad you asked it. Randy Feenstra brought it up during the last session when we had one of these. So I had a home from which I was elected. It was my family's home, the home that we brought our children to. When my wife, through a couple of her clients, found a home that was outside the supervisor's district, I sought legal counsel on what we would do in order to be able to serve out the remainder of my term. I followed that. I also disclosed it to the auditor and to our county attorney, and they, without objection, allowed me to keep this balance. When those moving goalposts kept moving, including spending a majority of the nights at the previous home, I followed that. Unfortunately, our Democrat auditor did an about face and changed course on what I had been advised. But I also want to say this, and I'd like to say this directly to the Feenstra campaign that's chosen to make a lot of hay of this. I'm a father and a husband as well. And so when my family started to be watched at either home, when they feared for their safety, I made a decision. If I had it to do over again, and I would get some things in writing, but I've written extensively about this, made the decision that after 5 years, I decided to move on and focus solely on not only my family, but the campaign. But I will tell you this, we've just put up over 700 yard signs here in Woodbury County. We have the support of the business community. We have the support of constitutionalists and people who said, stay in this race. Don't let a particular candidate make hay over this. We know who you are, and we know where you stand.
John, you got one?
I do. COVID. The response from the federal government has been to spend a lot of money. And there's been a lot of questions about, is it being spent correctly? What would Jeremy do with when he's a congressman if something like this were to come up?
Well, I choose to lead, and I choose to lead with our commander-in-chief. I think that that's important. I applaud him for using the Defense Production Act, but I'd also stand in the gap on behalf of our ag producers and our community that's noticed very keenly the broken food supply chain. And so passing things like the Prime Act, which allows our cattle producers to get their product more quickly. I applaud our ag secretary for what he's been doing in order to not just have this consolidated market. I'd also make sure that our religious liberties aren't trampled upon. As a chaplain, that is a keen and pressing issue to me. You see where governors have overstepped their bounds and trampled, I believe, on the First Amendment. And then finally, I would never pass anything that I haven't read. So if Nancy Pelosi, and Lord willing, she will not be the Speaker of the House if I'm elected, but approaching any speaker who says, well, you need to pass this, and you don't need to be present, you will not find somebody in me who will pass that along to our children. We're now at $26 trillion in national debt. I do believe that money was well spent when it was targeted to individuals, to unemployment insurance, and to helping those who obviously had fallen on a hard time through no fault of their own. We do need to reopen our economy. We do need to get back on our feet. If you compare 1968 and 69 and the Hong Kong flu, which is very similar, they didn't shut down our economy. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so moving forward now, as we reopen our economy, you'll have somebody who has the ag interests and the small business interests and our family's interests at heart if I'm elected to Congress.
And a follow-up too on the pandemic. So obviously it's changed the way candidates campaign. It's potentially changing turnout models based on the statistics we're getting from Secretary of State Paul Pate. How has it affected your campaign, and how do you think the change in turnout could affect the outcome of the race?
Well, we are banking on the over 17,000 miles that we put on, the 60 some endorsements that we now have, including again, the Iowa co-chair of the Trump campaign, the lead counsel for Iowa's Heartbeat Bill, the 260 Iowa State College Republicans, and elected officials, veterans, faith leaders. We are leveraging them because they are ones in their communities, their church groups that are reaching out to others. And we think that that's so important. It has made it so that the candidate who's the most flexible in some ways, I believe, will win. We've been very adaptable. And we think the high turnout is going to be very good. I will just be upfront. Here in Woodbury County, we have about 1 out of nearly every 5 who will vote in this entire race of the 39 counties. So we like our home base of support here, but we've also put in the hard work. We've been in the central committees, and I think that that has paid off and will pay off in the end, and we will work to victory.
Very good. We have about a minute and a half left. So maybe if you want to hit on some of the impacts of the pandemic and what Congress can do, such as the food supply, and then maybe give us your final thoughts too, since we're running low on time.
Sure. So thank you so much for hosting this opportunity. It's invaluable and very much appreciated. So I think that we need to make sure that Congress, I mentioned before, passing the Prime Act, as well as looking to enforce antitrust laws that can make sure that there's fairness in pricing. We also need to keep our eye on our small businesses as they recover, putting more economy of their own dollars in their economy, and making sure that the Trump tax cuts are permanent, and that we safely and judiciously reopen our packing plants and other of the supply chain that's so critically important. I'm running because I know where the left would take us in this country. We face a $26 trillion national debt, a disrespect for the sanctity of life, erosion of our personal rights, our liberties, from the Second Amendment to our rights to worship and speak freely. I want to stand with our commander-in-chief for such a time as this. I want to be part of a new conservative majority that limits government so that we can maximize personal freedom and restore this idea of the American dream, that you can do anything and you can be anybody in this country. It's not relying upon your name, your class, your origin, and unleash the opportunities that we have for the future. And you can check out more at jeremytaylorforcongress.com. I did hear a little buzzer in the background, so I believe that that's the end of my time, but I so much very appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, and we greatly appreciate you coming on. And thanks.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend.
All right, you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next up will be Mr. Bret Richards. So let me bring him in here. So he's connecting right now.
Hi, Bret. Can you hear us?
Guys. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, welcome.
Good. Good.
So like with the others, Bret, we'll give you, and that's a good name, by the way, we'll give you a chance to introduce yourself and also any opening comments you'd like to give.
You know, I've seen a lot of you so many times. I was trying to think of something new to start the day out. So I will go back to part of introducing where I'm from. I'm from Irwin, Iowa, and many people do know it by the school district. Irwin, Kirkman, Manila, Manning. I came Manning. It's a small school over here. I grew up in Irwin. I was born in Harlan, just down the road. Ended up marrying my high school sweetheart after we graduated college. Jill, actually our anniversary is Wednesday, the 27th. Somebody remind me so I don't forget that day. But on so we got married right after college. I went in the Army. I was a combat engineer officer, and I loved doing that job. You know, there's no better job in the world than getting to lead soldiers, and especially being combat engineer, because you know, I got to jump out of airplanes, blow stuff up, and I got to sleep in the mud too. But Jill and I, we wanted to come home to Irwin to raise our family with the same small town values that we were raised with. And we were fortunate enough to be able to come back here, and mom and dad had a family business. And so we did come back here, and lo and behold, you know, we've got 3 kids, a 17-year-old and twins that are 14. And we're so excited that baseball and softball season's gonna happen. Let's let them play ball, and I'm really excited about that. And I think that kind of lets you know who I am, I guess, for some of the people that don't, and maybe a little different take on for some of you that have heard it a few times.
That's great. So, Bret, go ahead and give me your take on the right to life, on euthanasia, on abortions. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. So, you know, I do believe in the sanctity of life. I believe it starts at conception and ends in natural death. I don't know. It's one of those hard topics to, when you argue with a liberal, to try to find some common ground to explain to them. No, it starts at conception. And but that's one of those things that I think people of faith get and understand. And euthanasia. I do not. I'm worried about socialized medicine. We've seen it that, they kind of joked about it sometimes. Some of the people about death panels, if we have socialized medicine, boy, it's not too far away for things like that. Let's see what else on that, John. I guess hopefully I covered them all there.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Bret, what's
Yeah.
next?
So with that, there's obviously a crowded field, 5 in the race. What do you, or why do you feel that you're the best one to represent the voters of the 4th district?
I think you got to look at my background and what I bring to the race and what I bring to Congress. It's about my life experiences. And while I do have some unique experiences, like I said, I learned leadership from the best place in the world, in the Army. I grew up working hard, just like most Iowans. I actually think that my education does play a part in it. I've been educated as a problem solver. I have a civil engineering degree from the University of Iowa. I know that's tough in Story County to say, but I go Hawks.
Go Hawks, that's fine.
Yep. And I do have a master's degree in leadership and a PhD in human capital management. And so I do look at problems a little differently, I think, than others in the race. I do look at them logically and try to find the solution that works for Iowans.
So what happens, Bret, when there's some legislation that you don't agree with personally, but you're getting back from the district that there's an overwhelming approval of that type of legislation? How does Bret's principles play into that kind of a decision?
It is a republic. You do elect the person that you think best represents you. I will go and I don't think we'll have to worry about it because I truly am like most people in the district. I get told all the time that I do remind them of someone they know, and usually it's someone close to them. So I guess there's always things like that, John, but I just know that that I will do the district proud and do the right thing.
Yeah, and with that, Bret, we've been trying to think of a hard question for each candidate. So we're trying to be fair and have a hard one for each one. So obviously, you're running as the neighborhood guy, the local Iowan, and that can come with being relying on grassroots, more of a shoestring budget. So with that, it can be difficult to get your name out there. Do you feel that you have the ability to gain the traction and get the name ID needed to win the race?
I thought talking about being an Iowa Hawkeye to Story County was the tough question, Bret. Absolutely. Getting your name out there for anyone in a district as big as this, there's 39 counties. It's the 32nd biggest district in the country. But you know what? We started early. I think it's probably been about 490 days, give or take a few. And what I did is I've been to every county multiple times, 30 county fairs of the 39 counties. I went to every central committee. I think I might be the only candidate in the race that can say that. Had over 250 campaign events along the way. It's about 73,000 miles on the van now. And what that tells you is that I have been out there talking to people. Before the pandemic, I was door knocking. After the pandemic, it's been social media, name recognition that way. That is a challenge for anyone that's not an incumbent.
So, Bret, are you getting your money from inside the district, or are you getting money from some external sources?
I get most of my money from inside the town of Irwin. Actually, Jill and I, we've been very blessed in our lives through hard work and some other things. We've actually self-funded most of our campaign. I don't have the breakdown. I'm guessing it's over 95% of the money is from it within the district. There's some family and friends outside the district. Primarily that's, and I would have to look, John, but it's primarily our own money and from very generous people locally too. So, yeah.
Okay.
So obviously right now, one of the big things we're talking about is the coronavirus pandemic. How do you feel the government's response was to that, and what do you think they got right, and what do you think they got wrong?
So, it's one of the unique things in our country's history, coronavirus. Of course, there's going to be things that we get wrong. Anyone that says that we haven't, not being straight with you. I think we got to look back and analyze things and learn lessons from that way. That's one of the things that you guys probably do, but in the Army, they teach you have to have after action reviews, and you go back and see what you did good and what you did bad. For the most part, what the executives did good was they made decisions in real time with the assumptions that they had at that moment. I remember kind of one of the surprises when Italy's mortality rate came out, it was almost 10%. Well, of course, that changes any executive's perspective on it. And then as we get more data, we see it's maybe double the flu. And now we're going back and saying, look, we've got to change our understanding of the situation and expand on, get our rights back. We've had people that have overreached. Michigan governor always comes up. And in Iowa code, we actually have a problem with that. Some of you may have heard me talk about this. I wrote an article in the Iowa Standard, April 15th or 16th, where we have written in the code, the governor really can take away your rights. And that's something we should be troubled by, and we need to fix it as soon as we can. The legislature comes back on the 3rd of June. It sounds like they won't take it up. Steve Holt, he's actually my representative. He's very outspoken about it, and I appreciate him doing that. And there's Senator Guth, he's very outspoken about it too. They need to address that as soon as they get back. Otherwise, we're going to forget about those things.
Okay, I got a double question. One is the 4th district seems to get a little bit of a media attention on the national level. And how are you going to handle that? And before you answer that, the second one is, do you think it's possible to be honest and trustworthy once you're in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I'm never going to change on that front. My integrity is too important to me. You know what? I'd rather lose my life than lose my integrity. So that's not going to happen. And I've already said I'm going to serve 5 terms, because I do think a lot of people go there and they start listening to the staffers and the special interests, and they do think that they're special. I know I'm just a guy from Irwin. Let's see, that you had the first part of your question. What was that, John? I'm sorry.
It's the media attention, and how does Bret handle it?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to talk to Manila Times, not the New York Times. I'm going to talk to the Sioux City Journal. I'm going to do KWIT. I'm going to do those things, not worry about the national press. You know what? That's just for people that want attention, I think. I'm going to focus on Iowa's 4th district. And, I'll be fine talking to those people because they really are Iowans. So.
Yeah. And with coronavirus, it changed the way candidates campaign, potentially changing turnout models based on what we're hearing from the Secretary of State. So how has it affected your campaign, and how do you think a change in turnout could affect the outcome of the race?
Yeah, the last 90 days, our plan was to be door knocking. Here we are over Zoom talking to a lot of people. It's changed how we do everything in life, I think. What's different is the fact that we're meeting people where they are. Iowans still expect to meet their candidates, their representatives face to face. We don't want TV commercials that just tell us a talking point. And we want to get a measure of the person that's going to represent us. The turnout models, very interesting. 69,000 maybe absentee ballots, give or take. I think we're over about 40,000 have come back, plus or minus. So it's already one of the highest turnouts in primary history. It might be the highest in the 4th district. I don't know what June 2nd is going to look like. If we're going to have 20,000 or a little less. But yeah, it's a big unknown. It's unique in history, just like our country experienced it. We're experiencing it very uniquely too.
You know what? I think you got any last words? We're about done with you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, John.
For that, Bret. We got about 2.5 minutes. So
Okay.
in
Oh,
the
okay.
pandemic, there's been agriculture, renewable fuels, food supply. Do you have solutions for Congress to potentially help bring those sectors back that are very important to Iowa?
Well, I know ethanol is very important in Nevada. You got two very nice cutting edge ethanol refineries there. I've been to both of them. And I am worried about that. My family business, we were the first ones to sell gasohol back in 1978 in Shelby County. So we've invested our family resources over the years producing Iowa products. And right now with oil prices crashing, of course, then ethanol prices go down. And, that's a challenge. We've got ethanol refineries closing all over the place. We have the EPA Administrator Wheeler in October saying, don't worry about the small refinery exemption, big oil companies, biggest companies in the world. And so we've hurt our ethanol industry, something we've spent 40 years of Iowa money, Iowa work developing. We've got to make sure that exists. And there's a lot of things we can do. We can extend where the waiver was supposed to go, or excuse me, where the deadline was. We can extend it out another 10 years to make sure that those people that invested in it have the opportunity to let the free market work. And we should, while we expand more markets.
And now we have about a minute left. So
Okay, well, I'd love to tell you about my kids for another minute, but I'll tell you what. It is just a few days until June 2nd. And I would ask that people look at who I am. You go to richardsforcongress.com, and I always give my cell phone out, whether it's a radio, TV, newspaper, or one of these sessions. It's 712-579-4753. And I welcome anyone to call me. I've only had, over the last 500 days, only 2 calls that I was like, ugh. But other than that, I've had hundreds of people I've talked to that way. And I love talking to Iowans about conservative issues. I've just asked that you consider who I am and the fact that we know that what we're doing in Congress is not right. We've got to change Washington, D.C. before it changes us.
very good. You about hit the time on the head. So you're the only one that hasn't made it ding first. So nice job.
Thanks, Bret. Thank you, John.
Appreciate having you on.
Good seeing you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, and so last but not least, we have Congressman Steve King, who will be joining us. And so he's connecting right now. Made it ding first, so nice job.
Thanks, Bret. Thank you, John.
Appreciate having you on.
Good seeing you.
Goodbye.
Hi, Congressman King, how are you?
How you doing, Brad? I'm listening to Bret Richards. I always get a smile out of listening to him talk.
There you go. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Like the other candidates, we'll ask you to introduce yourself and give any opening thoughts you would like to give.
Well, I think people know me pretty well, but I'm Congressman Steve King, and I've represented the 5th Congressional District in Iowa, the Western 3rd, and throughout that decade period of time. And in the redistricting, I had the privilege of taking on North Central Iowa as well. And that includes, of course, Story County and Ames and the Cyclone. So we added a lot of extra zip to our operation when we were able to have that going on. And I miss the people in Southwest Iowa, though, the hill folks down there. And what I said to them is that, I've got better cell coverage up north and I've got more Norwegians. So it balances out pretty well, but I still miss those folks. And I spent my life in the construction business. I started a construction business, earth moving business in 1975. Today, my oldest son owns that, and we run several crews out there doing underground utilities, earth moving, and farm drainage tile. So we're tied into this economy. We're very, very sensitive to it. And where I'm sitting right now is in my house here at the place I call Base Camp Chiron. It's about 5 miles northeast of the little town of Chiron, Iowa. And I'm surrounded by cornfields, and a little further out, good neighbors. I can't see them from where I live, but I never had a bad one. And Marilyn and I have raised 3 sons here. They've only known one father, one mother, one church, one house, one school. And they live all within 10 miles of my house today, each with their own wonderful daughter-in-law that amazingly fell in love with my sons. And we have 8 grandchildren, and we are networked together, just the American dream for sure. And so this set me off to, in the end, of the Iowa Senate, and that came out of the frustration of what wasn't happening and the lack of values that I saw within some of the people in our General Assembly in Des Moines. And then 6 years later, off to the United States Congress, where I have been very active in everything that matters to conservatives. I heard Bret talking about renewable fuels in 1978. I was working on those issues back then too, although I didn't sell the first gallon in Sac County, but I've shaken the hand that pumped the first gallon in Iowa. And that's Thurman Gaskell, whom I served in the Iowa Senate with. I think we should bronze his hand. And the first legislation that I introduced into that when I got to Congress was as legislation that laid the foundation for small ethanol producers and biodiesel producers. And so I wrote that legislation, I introduced it, it became law, and I should have had that was easy button to push. It's not that easy, but we did get the first one done and a number since then. And through that period of time, I've represented the Iowans on the Judiciary Committee and on the Ag Committee and on the Small Business Committee. Chuck Grassley asked me to write up a report about how it was that I managed to get on the Judiciary Committee, not being a lawyer. Because when he was in the U.S. House of Representatives, they denied him a seat on the Judiciary Committee because he wasn't a lawyer. Well, one thing happens when you work in law. Eventually, you become a pretty good lawyer with or without the degree. And I've had the privilege of chairing subcommittees in the Ag Committee and chairing the Constitution Committee and the Judiciary Committee. And also for 16 years, I've been the chair of the Conservative Opportunities Society. It's one of two conservative groups on the Hill. The other one is the Freedom Caucus. And we are the Conservative Opportunity Society, formed by Newt Gingrich in about 1983. And so I've held that gavel longer than anybody ever thought about holding it. But we bring in influential speakers every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, and that starts the dialogue for the debate on the floor of the House. So we always bring them in right on target, hopefully as we can. The subject matter that's there, from Justice Scalia to Phyllis Schlafly to Tucker Carlson, and the list of folks goes on. That's part of what I do in Washington. But I would just say this to people, that I am a full spectrum constitutional Christian conservative. I'm not just saying that. All of my record stands up to all of that scrutiny. And I've stepped forward and I've run to the sound of the guns for the people in Iowa. It's not something where I need to put my finger into the wind and see where the wind is blowing. These are my convictions. My convictions match the convictions of the conservatives that are the core of the grassroots activists of the Republican Party. And I've got 4 opponents, but not one of them has taken issue with a single vote that I put up in all the time that I've been in Congress or the state Senate for that matter. And I said, I'm not that happy with myself. I'd like to have a couple of them back. And they say, well, which ones? I'm not telling. So that's it. I mean, I'm happy to have all of this scrutiny. I want people to look at my record, examine every word I said, go back to the original source, so please, not what they said I said, but what I actually said. And I think the people that are going to the polls are going to be real pleased with the job that I have been doing. I can always do better, and we're always working to do better. We also have an excellent staff. And one of the standards that I put in place before I hired the first one, and the first one was Sandy Hanlon out of the Sioux City office. She's with us today, and she's the best caseworker in the United States of America. But we put everybody on board. First, they have to be a movement conservative and pro-life. And putting that marker down means that their judgment's going to be sound based on moral values, good legal rationale as well. I'm very, very pleased with the staff we have, the chance we've had to serve Iowans. So I'll just pause there, Bret, and take any questions you might have.
Sure. And we've tried to ask each candidate a hard question. So we have one for you. And Jeremy Taylor kind of alluded to it earlier, bringing up the election results in Woodbury County in 2018, that he ran and the ticket ran ahead of you in that county. And we saw a similar phenomenon in Story County. So, and then some say that it affects local races. So do you feel the situation is different this time in 2020 in Story County than it was in 2018?
Well, I don't know if it's different in Story County, but we've got 39 counties. And the rules are you need to win a majority of the votes in 39 counties. My margin of victory, even though I had Steve Stivers, the chairman of the NRCC, attack me 1 week out. We weren't really running against J.D. Scholten. We were doing fine. We were 18 points up, 13 days out, when the Republican chairman attacked me, and it had the effect of validating all of those phony leftist attacks. That will not happen again. We'll have Donald Trump on the ballot also, and we'll have all this inertia and all this support that's going on here. But Jeremy's been giving this analysis all along, and if you take that out of his repertoire, I'd get to the point where I would like him. But Jeremy he lost his first reelect to the Iowa House, and then he hasn't been able to finish his second term in the Woodbury County Supervisors. So if I were he, I'd tread pretty carefully along on that path. But if somebody wants to know what it's like to get elected here in this 4th district, I don't know why they don't come to me. There's no question I'm the certified top expert on this, because I've won something like 23 or 24 elections in a row. I've never been defeated, and Jeremy has been defeated, and Randy Feenstra has never defeated anybody. So when I hear those critiques from them, what it is your political opponents will use the arguments that are available to them, and they'll use them until they're taken away by rebuttal. And so hopefully they're listening to me, and I won't have to listen to that again.
Steve, don't act like I'm ganging up on you. You kind of went through a media ringer. And how does or has it changed how you are going to work with, against, for, to, through the media when they are approaching you?
Well, one thing is everything gets taped. And, people say I made a big mistake by doing an interview with the New York Times without taping it. I can look at that and say that was a big mistake. I said that from the very beginning. But on the other hand, if I'd never done an interview with anybody unless I had the ability to tape it at that point, there have been a lot of messages that never went out there that did a lot of good too. And so what I had come to before that interview with the New York Times was that if I'm caught in a place where I feel like I should be doing an interview, and if I can't record it, I just don't say anything that I haven't already said to the press. I should be safe. But that didn't protect me this time with the New York Times, because they plugged I'll say that they plugged, I don't know if they actually plugged the words in there differently. I believe he fed those words to me, but it was the punctuation that completely changed the meaning of it. And it was also true that this was orchestrated from the beginning. I knew they were coming at me as early as the day before Thanksgiving in 2018, when a top political operative came to me and said, they're going to try to ambush you again. They are mounting a coup against you. And they believe that they can bring all of the force of all the media in America against you, a massive media broadside. And he used these words, and force you to resign. And he said, my advice to you is preempt this at the White House. Here's the messenger that they plan to use. And so what I did was I preempted it at the White House. I went to the messenger on January 8th. I knew I was sending a signal up to the people that were planning this. And I walked out of that place at, 4:40 p.m. that day on January 8th. The next morning at 11:23 a.m., Randy Feenstra announced on Twitter that he's running against me. I think he had to have a little time to delete 10 years of tweets. He scrubbed every tweet. And then his first tweet is that he's running against me. And the following day, the New York Times story came out. So this was orchestrated. And how do I deal with it from now on? I have a recording device that I keep with me at all times. And so I do turn that on when I need to be doing the recording of people. But also, this is, I don't plan on doing a lot of this communication with those types of media. We're being pinged now by the New York Times. Trip Gabriel wants to write another story. And we had a discussion yesterday, do we answer him or don't we? As tempting as it is to give him an answer, we don't want to give him another excuse to write another story. So we're going to stay away from some of those folks, but we cannot let them decide who is or who isn't going to represent the people in the 4th Congressional District. And right now, there's a powerful amount of influence coming out of the Northeast coast, John.
Yeah. And Congressman, there's some debate going on in the comments over here, so we'll let you give your answer on the committee assignments, and will you or will you not get those back? So there's folks arguing both sides in the comments here, so we want to give you a chance to answer that.
Okay, you see me looking around here. I'm grabbing the paperwork on my desk. This is the list of the steering committee members. There's 3 pages here, but there are 30 members of the steering committee. I've got them marked up on who's going to vote with me and who's going to vote against me. I've found only 3 that would vote against me in a steering committee. They're the 3 the press found on the first day, amazingly, isn't it? They didn't find anybody that was for me. They just found 3 against me. Well, they're the only 3 that I could find. And I've been working this with Kevin McCarthy. We've done several meetings this year, and then you add to that the texts and the phone calls, multiple communications on this. But I actually had the date off by a day when I announced this a little over a week ago, and it was actually on Sunday, April 19th, that Kevin McCarthy called me, and we had this conversation. And so I have the transcript of that here in my hand, the transcript of that conversation based on what I said at precautions we have to do these days. And I will get it down to the meat of it, which says, at the end of our discussion, I wanted to make it really clear. And so I said, quote, "This is my understanding. And so that we understand each other, I'll ask you this way." And I'm asking Kevin McCarthy, quote, "Will you go to the steering committee and advocate on my behalf to restore me to all my committees?" Close quote. Kevin McCarthy's answer was a direct answer. He said one word, yes. And so then I went on and I said, "I don't need anything, Kevin. I don't need any kind of compensation. I don't need any retribution or anything of that nature. We just need to fix it and put it the way it needs to be." And his answer was, and I'll quote, "No, I appreciate that. That was one of the things that really helped me make the decision, is when you told me that." So when I got to Washington last week, I learned that I heard Kevin McCarthy's statements in a press conference around noon and concluded it was better not to be talking to him, but to be talking to the steering committee instead. He didn't misinform people when you do a precise analysis of that. He just didn't take the opportunity to clarify what I've just clarified. And when they asked him, did he say that I would be exonerated? He said, "No, I never said that." And it's true, he never said that. Those were my words when I equated General Flynn's exoneration, which I believe comes fairly soon, with my exoneration, which I believe comes fairly soon also. So nobody's got any facts against me on this. I have proven that to be false. And we cannot let that kind of thing stand, or you will never have a member of Congress that has actual freedom of speech. And already it intimidates so many people that it diminishes our ability to address our problems. So I have to walk through this thing, defeat this precedent, and come out the other side of it strong and vocal and effective. And there's a good number of members that are working on my behalf for the votes in the steering committee. I think we've got at least 26 that are a yes. And all Kevin McCarthy really needs to do is do what he said, is advocate for me. And I believe that next week, if we get a steering committee meeting, I'll have my committees back.
Very good. And we have about 30 seconds. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
God bless all the people in the 4th Congressional District, the best people in the world. And I've traveled this world pretty well, and in the country and the world. And I see the values that we have are the values of our family, our faith, our work ethic, our educational foundation. And I've been able to contribute to each one of those aspects of it. And let's get our moral values right, our faith right, our families right, our Constitution right. If we do that, we've got a roadmap to make this an even greater state and nation. Thanks a lot, Bret, and thanks to all the Story County Republicans. I appreciate having the chance to have this conversation with you tonight.
Perfect timing. We appreciate you coming on, Congressman. And we just appreciate allowing all the candidates to be able to tell their story directly to voters, hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And like you mentioned, not through the media filter there. So it's been really helpful, I think, and informative, and hopefully informative for those watching.
Thanks, Bret. And it saves me a lot of mileage too.
Sounds good. And we appreciate everybody watching. Thanks, Sean, for co-hosting, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Yeah, and keep talking on Facebook, folks.
Yeah, keep fighting each other in that chat. We want more hits on this. Okay, thanks everyone.